there, everybody. It's Dave here, and Darren is over there. That's right, he's back. And boy, have we got a show lined up for you. We're going to be talking about the roster over the majority of this show. And we're going to start off with roster reactions, what happened during the week and how it's churned afterwards and all sorts of stuff like that. And then we're going to get into the cutdowns in particular and the trades, the good, the bad, the ugly of all of that, what it means for the team, what it means for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. And we're going to finish up with this week in Vikings land, where we got a couple of topics. One's a bit of concern, and the other one is also a bit of concern. But you're going to have to wait to find out. Next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock. Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikings Land with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. Hey, there we go. George, tequila helps me exercise mine as well, just to let you know. And for those that are wondering, what is the temp here? It's 79, since that's become a tradition. Darren, what's the temperature up there in Yellowknife?
It was 21 degrees Celsius today. So really
nice.
Good. Very nice, but super, super smoky. Got like a couple of big wildfires not around in the area. So the smoke's been pretty bad the past couple of days, and one community's gotten evacuated. That's not really near here, but and a couple are on evacuation alert. Yellowknife is under no threat of that at this point, but never can be too sure, as I found out a couple of years ago about that one.
Right. Well, hopefully Yellowknife stays safe and that you aren't too busy and going, Dave, I can't make it because I'm going to cover the fires.
Yeah, I won't have to do that this time because I'm in a different job now. But the evacuation would be inconvenient, to say the least.
Gotcha.
Anyway.
All right. We named this one Vikings Trades, Cuts, and Surprises. And let's get it going with Theme 1. The roster.
Indeed. And thanks, George, for the welcome back. Sorry about last week. I was supposed to be on, and there was a health issue with my daughter, and I ended up driving to the hospital with her for something that turned out to be a migraine diagnosis. So it was unexpected. I did plan to be here last week, and then I left Dave in the lurch. So sorry about that. But Dave soldiered on 2 weeks in a row. Is going solo. We'll try not to have him do that again this year. He did a great job.
Appreciate it.
Did a great job as always.
I don't get to drink as much.
Yeah. Can't monitor the comments. It's tough doing being a solo operation. But yeah, of course, the Vikings this past week cutting down to the 53 man on Tuesday, and we're massaging it and continue to refine it as we go along. And as we said a few times on the show, Dave, there was no roster spots at all that were up for grabs. So that made the cut down day a little bit less exciting, I think, than maybe it would on some years when there are roster or starting spots that there's a training camp, a battle going on for. But even a lot of the backup spots, Dave, were spoken for at this point. So not a whole lot of intrigue, but a few. And of course, you and Tyler got at this early in the week too, but I got to have my say on it. And for me, the big surprise was Gabe Murphy not making the squad, and the Vikings decided to go with Chaz Chambliss over Murphy. Murphy had a really, really good game against the
on the initial cuts.
Yeah, on the initial cuts. Yes, he didn't make it. He's on the practice squad right now, so that's not the way that goes. But he had a very, very, very good game. His first game, the first preseason game, was pretty quiet. In the second game against the Patriots, was stellar against the Texans in the first game, and then I think he only played a couple of snaps against the Titans in that third game. But I just felt that and in that first game, Dave, he had a sack and a half. He created a whole bunch of pressures, very high PFF grade, looked like the kind of an edge rusher that you'd want to have on the team. And yeah, Chaz Chambliss, to me, he made some tackles. He played a lot in the preseason, but didn't see much of a pass rush from him. A lot of his tackles were 2 or 3 yards after the line of scrimmage. It wasn't like he was getting guys for tackles for losses. So I just felt that I was surprised by this a bit, because I felt Murphy looked like the better player to me, the more impactful player in the preseason. Now, there was probably special teams considerations here, right? Chambliss played a lot of special teams in the preseason. Gabe Murphy hardly played any. There might be Chambliss dropped into coverage in college a lot at Georgia, much more than Gabe Murphy has done in his previous shows, and Flores likes his edge guys to be able to drop into coverage and have the ability to cover on the pass. So there's a few factors there. Also, Murphy is 25 years old. Chambliss is 22. So maybe there's a bit more upside with Chambliss with more development. All of those things are true. But Dave, I tend to be, I don't know, my view on watching guys games is pretty simplistic. Like, I don't watch the techniques very closely. I don't even know what a lot of the techniques are, but I'm just looking for a guy. Did he make a play or not? And I saw Gabe Murphy making plays, at least against Houston, and a lot of them. And I didn't see Chambliss make those same kind of impact plays. So to me, I want that guy on my team and not the other guy. But the Vikings differed, and Brian Flores, I'm sure, had a big say in this, and he chose Chambliss over Gabe Murphy. But it does, last year does make me a bit, I guess when you look last year at the edge rushers that the Vikings had, of course they had Grenard, Van Ginkel, Pat Jones, the third was the third guy off the sidelines to come in. And then Dallas Turner mixed in there too, not as much as we thought. So, I think that was a pretty good foursome there that they had, and they were very effective last year. Now, well, Jones he's in Carolina. Now you've got Van Ginkel, Grenard, and Dallas Turner are your top three. And after that, you've got Bo Richter is probably your fourth edge rusher. Maybe not a big deal, Dave, because last year, Turner is the number 4 edge rusher. He got he was north of 300 defensive snaps throughout the year. So if Grenard, Van Ginkel, and Dallas Turner are healthy and effective during that time, the fourth edge rusher isn't going to play a whole lot. In which case, how much of an impact would Gabe Murphy or Chaz Chambliss even have, if they're going to play at all? So that would mean that Bo Richter probably Bo Richter is going to play a lot in special teams, probably not much with defensive snaps. Maybe it doesn't make a big deal, but a edge room that has Grenard, Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, and then Bo Richter and Chaz Chambliss, it's not, I think, as strong as it was last year's when you look at that edge room. And some of the guys beyond the top 2 or 3, the top 2 and Van Ginkel and Grenard weren't proven as much as Pat Jones was. So a little bit of a concern there, but maybe not a big deal. But that was the biggest surprise on the roster cuts. Probably the second one was that Dwight McLaughlin.
One of my research on why Chaz probably made it over is his tackling. And he sets the edge. He's good against the run, and he sets the edge. And I think that gave it over Gabriel Murphy.
Yes. Certainly there's arguments to be made for that.
On top of the special teams. Arguments.
On top of the special teams. And again, Murphy appears to be, he's a classic edge rusher where his strength is going after the quarterback. And hasn't dropped in coverage a lot in college or as a pro, but he hasn't played much as a pro, only one game. And how does he set the edge? Again, the Vikings thought that Chaz Chambliss was a stronger overall player and worth a roster spot compared to Gabe Murphy. And again, Gabe Murphy's on the practice squad. if somebody goes down on the edge, heaven forbid that happens, he's going to be elevated. He might be elevated even if there isn't an injury over somebody else. So he's here, still part of the Minnesota Vikings squad, and he still has an opportunity to work his way into the the edge room at some point in time, but he didn't get a roster spot. So that surprised me. I thought Dwight McLaughlin making the team was a bit of a surprise, because during preseason, he was consistently playing behind Mekhi Blackmon and Zamiah Vaughn. And McLaughlin, while those guys didn't play very well, McLaughlin also, I didn't think, played very well during the preseason. And yet, he's got a roster spot, and Blackmon and Vaughn do not. Blackmon gets traded, Vaughn gets put on the practice squad. That was a bit of a surprise to me. And
thank you, Chicken Pecker.
There you have it. A little bit of a mild surprise was Austin Keys, the inside linebacker, making the roster as well. Dave, he did get a sack in that final preseason game. I thought he looked, reasonably solid, and a guy that you would, as a young guy, undrafted rookie free agent, guy worth developing. Aaron, thanks for the props there. You sound like Tyler Forness there, bugging me about never showing up, but I thought Keys was a guy that I was surprised that the Vikings kept 5 inside linebackers. In my roster projections, I had them keeping 4, and I thought the Keys, even though I thought he did all right in preseason, that he was a guy you could probably stash on the practice squad without using up a roster spot on him. But that didn't happen. And again, between now and September the 8th, Dave, things could change depending on if the Vikings add another player or two, corner. A guy like Keys or Chambliss might not be part of that roster any longer. But that was another bit of a surprise to me. Overall, though, Dave, I think I, like just about everybody else probably viewing and those that cover the Vikings, I have the same concerns that you do, Dave, and it's about that cornerback room. We only kept 4 on the roster. McLaughlin is one of those guys, didn't play very well in the preseason, has very little experience playing in the NFL at all. And the top 3 corners are Byron Murphy Jr., you don't have no concerns about him. Isaiah Rodgers, who's had, we've heard very good reviews about him during OTAs and training camp and the preseason, even though he barely played in the preseason. And he's had good Pro Football Focus grades in the time that he's been in the NFL, but he's never, on the Colts and on the Eagles, he was not deemed a starter. He's never played starter reps. So how does he handle playing 900 defensive snaps a year as opposed to the 300, 400 he was in the past? We'll see. And then Jeff Okudah. Yes, I know that he's also drawn a lot of rave reviews during training camp, and Brian Flores thinks that he's going to work out in his defense. That says a lot when Brian Flores is willing to bet on you. But we also know the history of Jeff Okudah. First round draft bust. Has had a lot of trouble staying healthy. When he's been healthy and played, he's played very poorly. So if Isaiah Rodgers is your number 2 and Jeff Okudah is your number 3, and that means Okudah as a number 3 is going to play 600, 700 defensive snaps. Okudah in particular, I've got to see, yes, the reviews have been good, but he's got to prove to me and Vikings fans in general, I think, that he can actually be a competent and even better than a competent NFL corner. Because he has not shown that in the past. And, I have my worries about that, and about Okudah really panning out. And if one of those guys gets injured, then what do you do? At least the Vikings brought back Fabian Moreau and is on the practice squad. And Moreau last year was the guy that they brought in when Stephon Gilmore missed a couple of games, and they had him start. But I still think that they need to, or I'd prefer if they brought in another veteran. Now, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah sounded like the Vikings are ready to roll with what they've got right now, but that can change, particularly if somebody like Okudah does not perform as the Vikings are hoping that he does. So those are my thoughts on the roster, Dave. Again, cornerback, big concern for me still. Any any thoughts after you've had a few days to ruminate on this and what you've seen from the Vikings do as far as the roster cuts and the trades?
Well, first off, I want to thank George for the super chat. We appreciate it, and it is good to have the two old guys back together again. Not one of them on vacation all the time, but no, I found it interesting. Yes, there's guys out there. Gilmore's out there. Other guys, if we want to go old, but yes. I think Flores is happy with the group right now, or we would have made a play for somebody, maybe like Surtain down in, Cleveland, because I think you can probably get most everything. My daughters are out garage sailing and thrift storing and stuff like that, and I think you could do the same thing with Cleveland anytime you wished. But I think they're happy with what they have. Now, are we happy as fans? We're like, no, because we haven't seen it. We're sort of acting like the rest of the NFL when it comes to J.J. McCarthy. We haven't seen it, so how could you say so, right? And until we do, we're just going to have to grumble and be, ready for it. And then if they do fail, well, you'll hear it. Thank you, Davey, so very much. And yes, no injuries and no speeding tickets here in this upcoming week. Please.
Jarrett was talking in the chat that he thinks they might use Tavir Thomas for cornerback depth. And he was a corner up until they moved him to a safety. I don't think he played safety a lot or at all in Tampa Bay, which was where he had been, but they've got him as a safety now. And yes, he does have corner experience, and yeah, you could throw him in there. And of course, the Vikings will use Josh Metellus and I think Theo Jackson a lot in the big nickel.
The big nickel. Yeah.
The big nickel. And that's what Kwesi Adofo-Mensah also talked about in his press conference about, well, we played the big nickel a lot. And so that's not, didn't seem as concerned about the four corners. And we also know that the Vikings have, as Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has done every year, that the previous 3 years that he's been there, if they've seen a roster issue, and it's usually been, every time it's been mostly it's been like an injury related, but they have gone out and they've made a deal to get a veteran to bulk that up, whether it's TJ Hawkinson, whether it's Cam Robinson, whether it's Josh Dobbs in 2023. And I would expect that if the cornerback room isn't looking so good, that you will see them try to pick up do something similar with a trade early season, mid season, if they don't like what they're seeing from the corners, or there's an injury that makes the cornerback room depth even thinner than I think it already is.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
And Jared mentions Jay Ward, former corner at LSU as a college player. And yeah, he certainly is a guy who's going to play the big nickel if he plays at all at the safety position.
Mm-hmm. So on to theme 2. Where we'll continue this discussion, only this time with trades. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I want to get to the trades because Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was a busy general manager after they got the 53 set up, and even a little bit before that with trades. So I want to talk about those trades and what I think about them, and everybody's going to chime in on the chat too, hopefully anyway. And Dave's going to chime in as well. But first one, hey, Delton, better late than never. Or last week, better late than not being there at all, which was me last week. But yeah, first off, of course, we got to talk about the Adam Thielen trade, which finally got consummated midweek. And we talked about it on the show, 4 weeks ago, or it seems like it was 4 weeks ago. About it. It was all speculation at that point, Dave, but we broke it down, talked about how we felt about it. But now it's not speculation; it actually happened. And how do you feel about the Vikings bringing back a very, very good wide receiver and hometown hero at the age of 35? Normally,
I was the one promoting it for.
yes, you were. So we know that you'll be just fine with it. But normally, 35-year-old wide receiver, bringing him in, I would not really be on board with that, giving up any compensation at all. But I'm making an exception in this case, and I think that when the deal happened, clearly with the Vikings, they just could not go into this season and go into Chicago with Justin Jefferson and standing next to him on the other side, and in the slot you've got Tim Jones and and Ty Felton as the other guys that are next man up for him. This is assuming that Jalen Nailor would not have been healthy for the Chicago game. Now today, Dave, you shared an X tweet from Jeremy Fowler from ESPN, who's saying that he's getting reports from sources that Nailor looks like he very well is a good bet to play against Chicago. But I would say, but he also had a hand procedure. Doogie Wolfson reported this week. So if you've got a hand injury and you're a wide receiver, not the greatest injury to have for a wide receiver, because those babies are how you bring in the passes. Yeah,
it's like a kicker hurting his leg or his foot. You don't want to do that.
Nope. So if Nailor was not to play, you just can't go in with Tim Jones and Ty Felton and as your 2 and your 3 with Justin Jefferson. But even if Nailor was healthy or was able to play on the 8th, I still think that it's not great when, again, Jones, who's now in the practice squad, and Felton and Miles Price are the other wide receiver depth behind him. So bringing in Adam Thielen, they had to bring in, I think, somebody who had some kind of a track record in the NFL of being productive. And Adam Thielen is that guy. And I think that you would have, particularly when you've got Rondale Moore pictured there, who's out for the season, and the other guys like Miles Price, who has never played in an NFL game yet and is more, I think, a punt returner at this point than a wide receiver for the Vikings. So bringing in Thielen, big addition to the wide receiver depth. And you may have, I don't know if people saw, but when the deal was made, beat writers like Matthew Collar and Will Ragatz were bringing out some stats of Thielen this past couple of years in Carolina. And a lot of them are really good. Like the fact that Thielen has caught 75% of the passes thrown his way in his 2 years in Carolina. And his contested catches rate has also been very good at Carolina. The other thing was that Bryce Young and Andy Dalton, when they have targeted Adam Thielen, their quarterback rating was just over 100. When they've targeted anybody else in the Carolina, it's been in the 70s and 80s, which is not very good. So there's indications there, along with the stats that Adam Thielen has piled up, that he's still got ability to get open and make tough catches and be a productive NFL wide receiver. And so, yes, he's 35, but do I think that in the 8 or 9 months since he last played again for Carolina in January, do I think he's lost the ability to get open and make tough catches at the NFL level? No, I don't. So bringing him, making this trade makes a lot of sense, I think. Yes, the hometown stuff is nice, but I don't care about that. I care about them having a guy who can play and be productive. And I think Adam Thielen, he was as good an option as any to do that. And again, it has a great familiarity with the Kevin O'Connell offense. He's worked in the offseason with J.J. McCarthy catching balls, so they have a little bit of, they should have a little bit of chemistry to start off with. There's a lot of things that Adam Thielen pros to getting Thielen, even at 35, than if you had brought in somebody else who had no knowledge of the Kevin O'Connell offense, had never caught a ball from J.J. McCarthy or even seen him throw a ball. And so I look at this trade, Dave, is it, and it's a lot different than, I kind of thought back to 2010 when the Vikings traded for Randy Moss. And at that point, I did, and I think other Vikings fans kind of looked at that deal. We thought that was going to be like the deal that might turn around a season that was going south quickly. And I think for me anyway, I felt that way because I I kind of felt that Moss still had the ability to be a difference maker at wide receiver. And I think a lot of Vikings fans, when Moss got traded and brought back, were thinking he still was close to the player that we last saw in 2004 when he was on the Vikings. But we learned that he wasn't that player anymore. And
plus, he knew more than Childress did, didn't it? Graded Childress.
So I think the expectations for Moss when he came to Minnesota in 2010 were over the top and unrealistic. But I think Thielen at this point in his career, I think almost all Vikings fans and the Vikings in the front office, they've got a very clear indication of the kind of player that they're getting and that Adam Thielen is right now. And what you're getting is a guy, he's not going to catch a lot of deep passes anymore, I don't think. But he knows, he's been in the league a long time. He knows how to get open. He knows how to read defenses. He's still got very good hands. He knows how defenses, what they take away. He knows how to find soft spots and zones. He knows how to, leverage stuff and get open if he's press man, even though he might not be as fast as he once was. So that's a lot of pluses there. And I think that that's why I think he can still be productive. And this move, is it going to be the thing that cements the Vikings to making the playoffs and the NFC Championship and beyond? No, it does not. But it's one of those moves, along with everything else that the Vikings have done in the offseason, in the draft, and with the trades that they've done, that those little things that, if they go right, will get us to keep us on that trajectory. Just like every other of the other 31 NFL teams in the NFL, Dave, and all the things that they have done up to this point, that a lot of those things have to go right for them to get to where they want to go. So no guarantees in the NFL, Dave, but with any move. But I think this move would make sense, and it's very much defensible, unless you're totally against signing a player who's 35 years old, no matter what position he plays.
I think it's, like I said, I push for this. I think it's wonderful. And then on top of it, he revised his contract.
Yes.
Which was a good thing. The original numbers, and it was in its final year, included a $1.5 million raise, bringing his total to approximately $7 to $8.75 million, depending on who you're looking at and how you figure it out, with a $6.25 million bonus. The revised contract reduced that by $2 million, so it's going to be in a range of $2 to $4.25 million, depending on who the source is and the interpretation, whether it be OTC or Sport Rack. And then a removal of $4 million in incentives. Yeah. So it's going to be total, once it's done, approximately $5 to $7 million. And I've heard more on the lower end. It's going to cost the Vikings about $5 million for a veteran wide receiver 3. And he will probably be, when Jordan Addison comes back, he's going to be wide receiver 3. Now, the first 3 games, I suspect he'll be wide receiver 2. No matter what the health of Jalen Nailor is, because he's a better wide receiver than Jalen Nailor is. He catches more balls. And he's your typical now wide receiver 3. You need him to move the chains. He will move the chains. He's not going to be blazing down the sideline on a post to clear out anybody. That's Nailor's job. He's going to be across the middle or on the sideline or wherever it's at, getting beyond the sticks so J.J. McCarthy can throw to him, and he's going to catch it. We've talked about how his separation is still elite at his age. Last year, he had a separation when he was single covered of approximately 3 yards, and he was like second or third in the league with that. Well, it's not because of speed. It's because he's smart and knows how to, one, execute his routes and knows how to read defenses, and he's wise in how to take advantage of it. That is a good thing. He'll pass that further on to the wide receiver room, especially to the young guns that are there that could use it as well. The Tim Jones, not that Tim Jones is super young, but everybody else that's in there could use that, and it will help overall. I think this is exactly the move the Minnesota Vikings needed to help J.J. McCarthy and help the team overall, especially in those first 3 games, but I say all season long. Because the more guys you have in there of quality, you can spread the load a little bit better so that when it comes to December, January, and hopefully February, our guys are still fresh. They're not worn down by that time. And so that's why I love the Adam Thielen trade.
And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, there's no guarantees in the NFL that any move you make is going to work out the way you think or hope it will. So, but I agree with what the Vikings did. And again, I think it's a defensible trade that they made. The compensation is the compensation. It's a day 3 pick, an early day 3 pick, equivalent to a late 4th rounder, I think is what it probably will end up. But there was a need here, a pretty big need, and the Vikings filled it before the season started. And if it doesn't work out, I am not going to crap on this trade and do the 2020 hindsight thing and say, why did we waste draft picks on the guy who was cooked? The evidence up to this point shows that Adam Thielen is not cooked, not a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL at this point in his career, but we've already got one of those. So, and
how have our 4th round picks been? 4th and 5th round picks been?
How are any 4th round picks for just about any NFL team, right? So there's those things to think about. That's it on the Thielen trade. I think most everybody's, you could pick at it and make a case for it wasn't a good idea, but I think that we've, especially you and me, Dave, we've said our piece on this one. Let's get to the Sam Howell trade, though. Another trade, though. First, on this one, I am thrilled that the Vikings got anything at all for Howell because it looked like they were going to cut the guy. And usually when teams know you're going to cut a guy, they're not interested in trading for him because they can figure they've at least got a shot to get him when he hits the waivers. So there's that. But the fact when the Vikings traded Howell to the Philly and then they signed Carson Wentz right after that to be right now the backup quarterback, my issue here is, did they actually get a better backup than Howell? And yes, Carson Wentz is, and he went to North Dakota State. Yes, he grew up a Viking fan. Again, I don't care about any of that, and no Vikings other fan should care about that. What you care about is that Wentz can be a guy who, if he has to play, can move the offense and play well enough that the Vikings don't lose the game because Carson Wentz is in the game. Well, about that, yes, he's got a lot of starting experience, but he has been, last year, he played 1 game. He was back up to Pat Mahomes. He played 1 game. It was late in the year against Denver. The Chiefs had nothing to play for. They did not play hardly any of their offensive starters. Wentz was playing against a very, very good Denver defense on the road. Denver did have something to play for. So not a great situation for a backup to come into. But in that game, Wentz went 10 for 17, 98 yards, didn't throw a touchdown, was sacked 4 times. The Chiefs did not score a point in that game. Not good. Dave, not good. And it's really been since 2021 when he was at the Colts. That was the last time Wentz played, quote unquote, good, pretty good or decent. Since then, he's been in Washington, lost his starting job there. He was at LA for a year as a backup. Last year's with the Chiefs. So he's bounced around a bit, and he's now coming to Minnesota. And yes, I know that he has familiarity with the Kevin O'Connell with the time in LA and all that sort of stuff. But if he has to come in for a game or two, do I have confidence that he can, as I say, not screw things up and be a guy who doesn't cost the Vikings a game. I'm not too sure about that. Now, yes, Sam Howell also didn't look like he was capable of doing that, and that's why he's no longer in Minnesota. But I don't know if Wentz is really an upgrade to Sam Howell. But hopefully we don't get to find out, because McCarthy plays all 17 games and all the playoff games and plays lights out and never gets hurt and all that sort of stuff. But not really crazy about Carson Wentz, veteran presence and all, and the fact that he played at North Dakota State. I'm not confident that he's a great backup, if there is such a thing.
And all my friends from Fargo, it's a good team, but their colors suck.
Oh,
they remind me of a specific team we'll get into here in Theme 3.
Aaron says he's better. Wentz is better than Mannion. That is faint praise, I will just say. Faint praise.
But Howell blew it. He could have been the guy, but he blew it.
He completely blew it.
And we got more for him in the trade than we traded for him. So that's a plus.
And there's been speculation that that Wentz might not even be the backup by the end of the year if Max Brosmer continues to develop behind the scenes, because there's going to be no media availability for the practices really, except for what they give him 10 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, like on Wednesday, so they can watch the stretching. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there is that. But anyway, Wentz is the backup for now. Hopefully we never see him in a game other than kneel downs in victory formation, or playing a game where the Vikings have the number one seed sewn up and they are resting all the starters. And how about final trade to talk about is what happened to Mekhi Blackmon, Dave. This guy went from being a player, a corner that the Vikings figured was going to be a starting corner in 2024 until he shredded his ACL on the first day of training camp, to a guy that they ended up trading for a 6th-round pick to the Colts last week. When it's quite a bit of a fall for Blackmon. When Blackmon didn't play a lot as a rookie, Dave, in 2023, but when he did, I was pretty enthused about him. He was a guy who wasn't afraid to make plays on the ball. He wasn't just content to not get beat deep and let guys catch balls in front of him time after time after time. He was a willing tackler, even though he's not a very big guy. And he was willing to mix it up with the wide receivers and get physical with them, even though, again, he's not a big guy and a lot of the wide receivers are bigger than him. So I felt he showed a lot of promise as a rookie. But he shreds his knee, and Dave, I think we've gotten so used to seeing guys get serious injuries, particularly knee injuries that would have basically ended careers of guys in the 60s and the 70s and 80s and even the early 90s, and see them come back like Adrian Peterson did in 2012, and they seem to be better than ever. And I think the expectation was that Blackmon would go that way, but I don't know, like perhaps Mekhi Blackmon's knee did not respond well to the surgery and the rehab as we've seen other players, because again, what I said earlier about Mekhi Blackmon, those positives I saw from him, I did not see that player at all in preseason. I saw a guy who was always behind, trailing the guy he was supposed to be covering. He was 2 or 3 steps slow. He looked very tentative out there. And so is that because for whatever reason, the knee and his body has lost that explosiveness and quick twitch fiber and all that sort of ability post-surgery and rehab, and it's never going to be back to the way it was? Or is it because Mekhi Blackmon still doesn't trust the knee and the rehab that he's done, and he still doesn't think that it's 100% in his head? Well, the Vikings weren't willing to wait, so they decided to try to get something, whatever they could, for Mekhi Blackmon and have it be somebody else's problem. But again, it does leave the cornerback room a guy that you were thinking was going to potentially be your number 3 corner at one point in time, and now you traded him away. So a bit of a fall for for Mekhi Blackmon. As I said earlier, it leaves some concerns about the depth the Vikings had at cornerback, because Mekhi Blackmon in February I thought was going to be a guy who was going to be a fairly key part of this defense. Well, he's not on the team anymore.
Nope. And Kwesi's gonna have to account for it in the future, and we'll talk about it in the future, especially when we run up to draft season. But it's another one of his picks that seems to have failed. Now, can you blame injuries on some of these failures? Yeah. But with Mekhi, I think it's mental, because I bet that knee's 100%, and it just seems a mental block that he's afraid to push it for whatever reason. Maybe he saw Rondell go down and all that. He's like, nope, not me.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We got stuff for him, so that's good. We got a 6. Obviously, we paid more for him when we drafted him, but
yeah. With those trades, just I wanted to round out this segment, Dave. I do want to talk about all the trades and maybe what that says or doesn't say about Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the roster building that's gone on. Now, we spent a fair amount of time in the offseason, I think, giving Kwesi a lot of throwing bouquets at him for the job he did on addressing the interior offensive line and the weaknesses there, and addressing the defensive line, the interior, and the weaknesses we had there. And those are, we're not going to go back on that. But here you have, as you're setting your roster, your 53-man, Dave, and within 2 or 3 days, your Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the Vikings were scrambling to find a backup quarterback because the bet they made on Sam Howell did not pan out. They made a bet on a corner who they thought was going to be their number 3 corner in February and March, and they lost that bet and decided they need to trade Mekhi Blackmon away to get anything of value from him. And they only keep 4 corners right now. And then they also were scrambling due to injuries and this happens, to fix a big hole at wide receiver that they had, and they bring in Adam Thielen. So typically you would, at least this is the reward in me, but typically you would not, I don't think it's ideal for you as on the eve of the season that you've got to be scrambling to fill these type of holes on your roster. And maybe that's just me, but every team has holes, Dave, going into the season, and they don't have the depth at a particular position that the fans or the media would like. That goes for all 32 NFL teams, and the Vikings are no different. It's still a strong roster, but it did get to me thinking that, if the season for the Vikings, after a team that went 14-3 last year with Sam Darnold at quarterback, if it doesn't go so well this year because of various reasons, and for some reason wide receiver depth or the cornerback room, or even your backup quarterback because he couldn't get the job done in a couple of instances where he had to play, if that costs the Vikings wins and a playoff spot, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, I think, is going to be feeling some heat come February 2026 for the way he went about constructing the roster and these holes in these bets that they made that did not pay off on the roster at wide receiver, at corner, and at backup quarterback.
I agree, but at least he's not believing in the sunk cost fallacy where, we paid so much for this guy, we've got to keep him sort of deal. He's moving on and making the team better. We do have the second highest win record in the NFC during his time period. So it's half dozen to one. We just wish we'd start out better picks. And like I said, we'll get into that before draft season. We've already done a bunch of research.
Dave's been doing some research.
Yep.
Yeah. So there you go. Trades and what they might mean.
Now it's on to the next theme. Theme what?
3.
This week in Vikings land.
Doug L says, who is Detroit Bears and Packers elite quarterback to? Fair enough. Tyson Bagent is the Bears
For the
quarterback
Bears,
too.
he just got extended.
Malik Willis is the Packers
Malik
number
Willis.
2 guy. And then I don't even know. Isn't it Allen? One of the Allens is in Detroit because Hendon Hooker got cut.
Beat out Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be all that thrilled if you're the fan of any of those teams, if any of those guys have to play an significant amount, although Willis played pretty well in the time that he played last year when Love was out. Anyway, I just, good point, Doug. Like I said, hopefully Wentz never has to play and it's not an issue. And most teams who have to put in their backup quarterback are screwed anyway.
If Wentz comes in, I suspect it'll be only for the end of that game, and then we're going to see Max Brosmer.
Could be. So this week in Vikings land, a couple of topics we're going to get at, and just what are we to make of the Harrison Smith absence lately, David? We learned this week that he hadn't been practiced since August the 11th, which is, 3 weeks ago, thereabouts. And then we got the various beat writers came out and talked about how he is dealing with a personal health issue, not related to mental illness, by the way, and that he'll be evaluated weekly due to this health issue. So that's a bit vague. It's at least it's not a mental health issue, but not a great. And it sounds like there's a decent chance that Smith will not be able to play September 8th when we play the Bears in the season opener. And so Harrison Smith is not the guy, is not quite the player he was in his salad days in 2015, 2016, 2017. But the football knowledge that he has, the experience that he has, the knowledge he has of Brian Flores' defense and how he gets the defense set and recognizing offensive formations and what they might want to do, and the fact that he's still a very solid football player, even at the age of, 36 now? He's been through the wars. He's played at Soldier Field a gazillion times, dealt with the fans, dealt with the pressure there. So not really ideal that Harrison Smith, when you're trying to break in another new guy in Theo Jackson in the secondary who'll be playing a significant amount, I don't think it's not great news that Harrison Smith might not be able to play in that game. And like Sean's talking about, does he have long COVID? We've not heard any issues with Harrison Smith on any of that stuff. He's barely been, he's been a very durable player throughout his whole NFL career with the Vikings. But it does make you wonder what that issue is, if it's a personal health issue. But the Vikings probably are going to be. They're going to be fine if they can stay healthy. They're going to roll with Josh Metellus and Theo Jackson, and I have a lot of faith in both of those guys and being able to be the two safeties and doing a very good job in that role. Although that would mean a little bit different role for Josh Metellus, I think, in that if he has to be more of a traditional safety instead of the kind of the joker that he has been the past couple of years, does that limit his effectiveness a little? We don't know, but just a thought. But what this does mean is if Harrison Smith can't play in openers, that Jay Ward that Jared mentioned at LSU, that means he has a bit of who's been barely used in defensive snaps in his 3 seasons at the NFL thus far. That gives him a bigger role than we expected. Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I like Jay Ward, but I would prefer if Harrison Smith was on the field against the Bears. But the other thing about this is that if the Vikings are evaluating Harrison Smith weekly, it's just not the September 8th game, Dave, that he might not be available. Like, that's a possibility he could miss other games this year. And that is not ideal either for the Vikings because of the reasons I mentioned. and also not ideal when we as Vikings fans selfishly were looking for the hitman to burgeon that Hall of Fame resume by piling up, more interceptions, more sacks, more tackles, so he can cement his rightful place in the Hall of Fame when he does call it a career, because this possibly could be his last NFL season. But I think I've been saying that 2 previous off seasons, so got to be careful with Harrison Smith. But anyway, not great news. Hopefully he gets this resolved. The Vikings do expect that he's going to make a full recovery, but a full recovery from what, I guess, is the thing. And I don't know if we're going to get an answer from that unless Smith decides to tell us what that is. And Harrison Smith is a kind of a private guy, and I don't know if he will tell us exactly what that is.
Yeah, and you got a point. And they've listed it as a personal health issue.
Like, does he have a cancer tumor? Like,
and
it's not football related,
we've
right?
debated and tried to sleuth it. And if it was COVID, the NFL handles COVID differently. We thought, since he's been held away from the facility, that it might be contagious. Is it contagious? And then I also heard somebody said they thought it was with a family member. That thought crossed my mind as well, because hearing personal illness makes you go, that's an interesting way to describe it.
Yeah.
And they were emphatic. The Vikings let everybody know, and the 3 or 4 beat writers at the same time, it's not mental health related. So it's interesting to see what it is. Yes, fig nuts. The injury report comes out Wednesday or Thursday, and maybe Thursday because we play on Monday. And we'll find out. They'll list it as something. And then we can start this, whole sleuthing debate all over again. But something's keeping him out. And as long as it's not physically affecting him, he's going to be fine. He just got an extra, almost 3 weeks of senior day off, like Kevin O'Connell likes to give him, and he'll be fresh and he'll be ready to go, as long as it's not something that he's dealing with. Now, if he's dealing with it, then a couple worries may slip in, but we'll find out. And until then, I still think we got a good enough group of safeties back there to handle the Bears. I don't think
or any other
a whole lot of time to throw the ball.
Well, yes, there is that. But we do know that even at his age, Harrison Smith is a guy. Flores is moving up and down the line of scrimmage. Like, got him on the line. Is he coming on a blitz? Is he not? Is he backing out? And you always see Smith gesturing and moving guys around. So you lose that. Like Josh Metellus, I'm sure, can do those things. Theo Jackson probably isn't as much used to doing those things, but he did do those things at Tennessee, I believe. So, yeah, but it's just when the guy like Smith, who's been through all the wards, you just, for me, he gives me a level of comfort back there that I don't have if he's not in there.
And he loves playing mental games with the opponent's offense, not just their quarterbacks, but the whole offense and their offensive coordinators and the whole works. He's so good at it. So let's hope he's fine and he'll be ready to rock and roll. And we'll hear Wednesday when the press goes back in to catch their 10 minutes of stretching that, hey, Harrison Smith is back out here. Cool.
I see a few people talking about the rumor is Harrison Smith has shingles, which is
that was one of the things we discussed.
Because he'd be a little young to be getting shingles. I just got the shingles vaccine this year because I'm 56, but somebody at 36 usually isn't in jeopardy, but shingles is no joke. Right. If you get it, you could lose your eyesight, all sorts of bad stuff. But who knows, right? Like, but it's not a good thing if he did have it. Mm-hmm. But it is treatable, to some degree.
And that's whether he had chicken pox as a kid and all that stuff. So who knows? Mm-hmm. All right, now we get on to the other concerning item of the week.
I'd say very concerning. How about that team from Wisconsin trading for Micah Parsons? I had seen a report earlier this week about this, and I was that the Packers were talking to the Cowboys about it, and I was hoping it was a rumor and nothing would come of it. But Jerry Jones was dumb enough to trade Micah Parsons, and even dumber to trade him within our division. And I cannot tell you how disgusted I am that the Green Bay pulled this off, because Micah Parsons is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. And Green Bay, we rag on them a lot here on this show, and we hate them as much as you could hate anything. But the facts are that they've got a young roster. It's a pretty talented roster. They got a very good head coach. And last year, their defense really made pretty good strides under a new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley. I think the one thing that they did lack was an elite pass rusher. And now they have that elite pass rusher. And if you remember when the Cowboys came in, was it 2020, 2021, Parsons' rookie year, whatever. Remember when they smoked us like by 50 points or something like that? Like Parsons, the Vikings couldn't block him. And that's
that was the
something
first game.
And that's something he does regularly. Well, now we're not going to see Micah Parsons.
He's played 2 games against the Vikings.
Yes, he has. Yes.
First game, it was he beat Darren twice. Second game, he had 0 sacks against Darren.
Grandizer, I didn't have my own trade scenario for Parsons because I didn't think that the Vikings, they couldn't afford him. They've already got guys that, Grenard, is he as good as Parsons as a pass rusher? Pretty close, and maybe a better run defender than Parsons is. So I didn't have a trade scenario for that, but I was sure as hell hoping that he didn't land in our division, because the NFC North is already tough enough. We know that Detroit's very good. Packers had a solid team. The Bears, we expect to be a little bit improved this year. So it was already tough, and the Vikings are in it. And now Parsons with Green Bay makes it even tougher. And now we're going to be facing Micah Parsons twice a year for as long as he's a Packer, which should be at least 5 years, at least. So I'm not really loving this. And sure, I'll say that the Packers, does this make the Packers a Super Bowl favorite or anything like that? Like some people are saying, I think the Packers making the Super Bowl again and winning it is going to be largely dependent on this guy, Jordan Love, and how well he plays as a starting quarterback, just like it is for just about every other NFL team. If you got a great quarterback, you're in great shape. If you don't, not so great. So Love has got to be the guy that the Packers hoped he would be when they drafted him. So far, reviews are mixed on that. So it really comes to him, but certainly Parsons helps them a whole hell of a lot. And from a Vikings perspective, the Packers trading for him, and the compensation was a couple of firsts and Kenny Clark. I will not shed tears that we don't face Kenny Clark twice a year anymore, because he was always a big problem for our offensive line, particularly the interior, which we hopefully have fixed for a couple of years. But even looking at that, Dave, Clark is not the player that Micah Parsons is, and he's certainly not the pass rusher he is, and he'll turn 30 in October. So Parsons is younger and better and plays a more viable position on the defense. And from a Vikings perspective, this trade just sucks.
I agree. It sucks. To repeat what you said. Now, Grandizer asks, does this change how you see the NFC North rankings as of now, or how they'll finish in 2025?
I have been weighing that quite a bit. And like, you want to, I think, Dave, this is a big splash move for the Packers, clearly. And they getting a guy like him. And so, you look at this big splash move. Parsons is awesome. He addresses something the Packers didn't really have last year, which is a guy that can sometimes be unblockable and can get at the quarterback at will. But so initially I was like, fuck, this makes the Packers, they might win the division with Parsons, but he is just one guy. I think Jordan Love is the guy that the Vikings still have to, he's the guy that's going to decide how far the Packers go. And so it doesn't change my opinion on the NFC North this year. Big jolt in the arm for Green Bay. They're going to be super excited, but the Vikings went 14-3 last year and they strengthened their roster. So JJ McCarthy is a bit of a question mark for some, not to me at this point. So the Vikings are going to have to come up with a plan for how to block Parsons and deal with all the other stuff that the Green Bay defense might throw at them. But they invested a lot in the offensive line this year for these sorts of issues. And I think it's going to work out. And so that's why I think the Vikings, it doesn't change my belief that the Vikings should be either finish second or first in the NFC North this year.
Mm-hmm.
I still worry about Detroit more than Green Bay.
I do too. And for me, all it did is it swapped the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was picking Green Bay to finish last because of Jordan Love and his ups and downs. And the whole secondary and all their deficiencies that they have already. It swaps it. Green Bay will now go to third, and Chicago will drop to fourth. Now, is it going to be competitive? Oh, yes, this is the toughest division in all of football. You could have 3 teams with double-digit wins this year, without a doubt. And he's going to cause problems for other teams, but he has been figured out on quite a few occasions. So I'm not worried about it. We've got 2 great bookend tackles, and we've just improved our guards. We've got the best blocking tight end in the business, in my opinion, in Josh Oliver. He'll be stopped. Will he get some plays? Yeah, he might get a couple, but that's the normal ebb and flow of a game. Will he dominate the game? I doubt it. Not against us. Now, will he do it against a lesser team? Oh, possibly. That's quite a deal. Is he Reggie White coming to work with Brett Favre? No, I think you might want to call him Reggie White light, if that. And Love is Favre light. I mean, real light. You're talking like Michelob, 2.3 grams type of stuff. It's, like drinking water. It's not even close to comparing for quality that you're getting at that time. Reggie White was a true leader. As who was it, Fig Nuts or somebody says they live in Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he's not a leader. He's a detriment in the locker room. Reggie White, by far, was a leader, both on Philadelphia and in Green Bay. So unless that changes, and you've seen his spoiled act diva routine in this preseason play out, even if he did have a disagreement, he didn't have to act that way. There's, better ways of doing it, but we'll see. He's young. He's only 26, so he's going into his prime. That's the one thing that scares me a little bit is he's going into his prime, but he's a light edge rusher. He's not a big dude. He's a light dude. So I'm sure you've seen the picture of Christian Darrisaw standing over a Photoshop version of him. I think we're going to see more of that, but we'll see. I mean, it may be Dave just wishful thinking, but I do believe that the division will come down to us. And I think Detroit in a second.
Comparing Parsons to Reggie White, who might be the best interior defensive lineman who ever lived,
one of the greatest defensive players to play,
isn't a comparison at all. But I think there's been some mention of it in the comments a little while ago about Parsons as a run defender. Again, he's a little bit smaller for an edge rusher because he was a linebacker in Penn State, but he's not 270 pounds as an end, defensive end. So as a run defender, he's not nearly what he is as a pass rusher. And the Vikings, with bringing in Kelly, with the drafting of Jackson, with the signing of Will Fries, and getting Jordan Mason, who's a very physical runner. Yes. And you've got JJ McCarthy as your quarterback in his second year in the league, in his first year as a starter. The expectation is we're going to run more. If we are more effective and much more effective running team because of what we've done by adding Mason and improving the interior of the offensive line, you take Parsons a bit out of the equation in those games because you're running the ball a lot and more effectively against the Packers and moving the ball that way, as opposed to dropping back with Sam Darnold and holding the ball for 10 seconds because you're trying to hit a deep shot to Naylor or Addison or Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is the optimistic look on things.
I agree. And George Woodson was a shutdown cornerback. Yeah, he was. And they moved to safety, and he was good. God, it just. But that's the end of the show, sort of. Tomorrow we have the Real Forno at normal time, 6:05. We're going to have a Scoling with Friends this week, where I'm going to bring on Payday, and we're going to split, hopefully, the podcast where I'll do half and he'll host half, and it'll be on both channels. We're going to have Who Will Be King, and this time it's going to be over at the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fan channel. It'll be on Wednesday. We'll have, again, Tyler on Thursday. We hope to have a kickoff extravaganza with all the people that are on Vikings First and SKOL joining. I might send a sweet message to see if we can get even Sal back on. And we'll talk about that. And then Saturday, 2 old bloggers at 10 o'clock. This was the last Sunday episode until end of February.
Yep.
So we'll preview the game next Saturday and go over the week's events. And we've got something special for Saturday. In our third and final segment where we preview the game, we're going to welcome our newest contributor. The Drewster is coming to join us to talk inside the numbers. And the only way Drew can, which is going to be funny. I guarantee it. So just want to make sure you have that marked on your calendar. Saturday at 10 a.m. Central.
Got to get it early, folks.
So I want to thank everybody that's been here. You guys have been great. Anthony, thank you for the $2 super chat. Appreciate it. Everybody enjoy the rest of your weekend. It is the holiday weekend in both the United States and Canada. So make sure you do not blow yourself up trying to barbecue something this weekend. But do enjoy barbecue and a good beer or 2 or 3 or however many, or whatever your beverage and food of choice is. Enjoy it and enjoy the company you're with. Right, Darren?
Exactly. If you don't have good company, life just almost isn't worth suffering through, Dave.
So, what do we say?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby, and thanks for watching and all the great comments today, folks.
Yep, SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of 2 Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcast as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!